Welcome to How to Write Good. I'm your host, Daniel Poppy. You can find out more about me at danielpoppy.com. Poppy is spelled Poppie. At my website, you can find the first book in my series, The Ninth Hour, or you can find my serialized novel, One Last Toast for Ebenezer Fleet. Check both of those out on my website. So this is a little different episode than usual. Because this is going to be my last, at least in this format. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing or if I'm going to be continuing under the How to Write Good name. I'm going to still have everything up. If you ever want to check it out, if you found something useful, you can definitely rip it off and use it as you see fit, or spread the information if you think it's useful. So do that if you want to, but as of now, I've just been evaluating different things, and I'm like, this is something that the costs don't outweigh the benefits for it. So I spend more time worrying and figuring out stuff for this than it's actually worth to me. And there's other stuff that I would rather be doing. So this is the last one. I've been thinking, I've been ahead for a little while. I've been like a week ahead, and I've just been thinking about it. And I'm like, I worry too much about this, but it's not something really huge. And I would rather focus on writing itself and things that, I think I've learned a lot through this, but I'd rather focus on things that are going to be best using my time, which I think is the creative writing aspect. I actually tried to get into copywriting a little bit a couple years back, something like that. And when I was doing it, I was trying to do some portfolio work because, you think, you can take any type of writing and you can turn it in. You can learn, if you're good at writing, you can learn how to do copy, which I think is true, but my personality didn't mix with it very well. So when I started to do it, I'm just like, I hate this. I hated it so much because I was trying to communicate with some other people, but I wasn't trying to, I was doing it not to convey some human experience that's on a deep core level with everybody. I was trying to do it just to get people's attention so they would do something I want them to, which for me, I don't like that aspect. It's explicit selling, and I don't like that. I think there is a sense of selling in writing. I think that any type of good art sells itself to people, but I think that it sells itself in a different way than saying, hey, buy this product. And I just have found out that I don't do selling very well. So there's certain things that I just do better than others, and I've been doing this. And like I said, I've learned a lot, but I just have found out that I want to approach it differently. What I've been doing, if you have been listening, is I make an outline and I talk about that outline. I talk about a specific thing. And if I do continue under the How to Write Good name, I want to do more structured, more research, more scripted, not necessarily longer videos, but ones that are planned out beforehand to the exact words I'm using. And some people might think that is boring. I just think that when you're talking to somebody, if I had somebody to talk to, it'd be different. When you're talking to somebody, there's this exchange that goes on. It's more dynamic. But when you're talking to a microphone, when you're the only person, it's a little different. And you certainly can do it, but there is a limit to your thoughts, and you do start to repeat things. And I just think that if I do continue with talking about writing, it's going to be in that sense. It's going to be a little bit more straightforward. It's going to be shorter. There's a certain amount of fun that I have, but at the same time, it gets down to what is the best use of my time. And I guess this podcast, this episode, I'm just going to talk about what I plan on doing, because I'm still going to be around. Okay. I'm still going to be I'm not going to be putting out weekly podcasts, at least for now. Maybe I'll change my mind and that'll happen again, but I'm still going to be around. I'm still going to be doing things. I'm just not going to be having this podcast specifically. So if you're someone who listens to this podcast, who enjoys it, and who still wants to keep up with me, you certainly can do that. The easiest way is probably to just find me on a social media and follow it, because I'll be posting the stuff I have on social media, or the stuff that I'm going forward with. I hate social media. I really hate social media, because most people, when they do it, most people on social media, they put out a post and they get likes, and there's this endorphin that goes through them. They get a little zing. There's, oh yeah, that's great. People liked what I was doing. For me, it's the opposite. I don't actually like attention from large groups. even though I'm doing this. I don't like attention from large groups. I like attention where I'm sitting and I'm talking to someone individually. When there's too many people around me, or if I feel like there's a lot of people seeing something, I'm like, oh, like, what am I doing with this? So I don't really like that. So because of that, when I do something on social media, I push it out into the world and I try to forget about it because it makes me worry instead of makes me be like, oh, this is great. People are interacting and stuff like that. So I'm the opposite, and I like it best when I put something out, and not that I get positive feedback. I don't necessarily like the positive feedback anyways. I just want people to enjoy it. I want people to experience it in a different way, and I think that that's probably why I was attracted toward writing, because it's very personal. You know, it's as if you're talking to somebody else directly, because one person reads your book, right? One person, I pick up a book from an author, I'm reading that book. I can read it to somebody else, but generally it's somebody just reading your book, and it's more of like having a conversation between you and the author, or whatever they're trying to communicate to you. So I think that's why I fit into that. So I'll be around, and I'm just going to, I just want to explain the different things that are coming up in the future, that are the other things that I'm doing, because this is why these things I'm about to explain are the reasons, one of the big reasons why I'm not planning on doing this in the foreseeable future. So because this is the last one, because of these things that I'm explaining in large part. Okay. And I just want to explain the plan for each of, I always have multiple projects going on. I just want to explain those plans. So In Memoriam is the series that I'm writing. It's technically fits into sci-fi, and it technically fits into alternate history, but I would consider it more like a fantasy series. And I've said that in the past, and if you read it, it's more in line with something like The Wheel of Time. And it is set in a different world because it's set in an alternate world, but there's certain elements to a fantasy story that are unique. Okay. The different world is one that I think is oftentimes unique, or at least it's a world that it looks like ours, but of course it's not ours because it has specific elements. And then there's things that happen in the world that are unexplainable, right? It could be magic, it could be something else. And that's kind of how I convey that. And, I'm currently writing the second book in that series. This first book's The Ninth Hour. Currently writing the second book in that series. The second book is called Uncreated. I'm in the editing process, and my hope, it's 2020 right now. I hope to get that book out by the end of 2020. Now, that series is a long-running project I'm working on, and my idea is I'm going to have about 10 books in that series. If you're someone who doesn't like series, that's all right. Series is whatever. If you're someone who doesn't like a book series, there's other things I'm doing as well, so don't worry, and I'll explain those too as well. If you don't even read, then that's okay, because there's other things I'm doing as well. So I've got that series. I plan to have 10 books. That series is, I said it somewhat facetiously to a friend, that's my magnum opus. And what I mean by that is that it isn't just, it's not just the pinnacle of what I'm able to make. It's actually more of looking at my journey through writing and looking at what I've learned and looking at what I'm adding in. So I hope, and I plan on, and I plan on pushing as hard as I can to make every single book better than the last and add new things that I learn. And you're still getting the same cohesive story that goes through the whole entire thing, the whole entire series. But at the same time, you're seeing how the writing's getting better. You're seeing how the storytelling's getting better. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that is because you always get an end product with writing. People don't realize how much work goes into writing. People don't realize that it goes from this flicker of an idea in somebody's mind to sometimes an outline to sometimes this enormous outline, in my case, to a very, very rough draft, to a 50,000 word rewrite, to stitching everything you have together, to polish, to sending it out to a copy editor, to sending it out to whoever you need to check it out, and then you edit more. And then if you're publishing it by yourself, you go through getting a cover, putting it together, formatting, etc. Or if you're sending it out to agents, that process as well. I don't think people realize how much effort goes into it. And I think people have this idea that it just springs to life. And I think people have this idea that if you are a writer, if you're doing something creative, that it's something that you just know how to do. And it's certainly not something that I've known how to do forever. And it's certainly not something I know how to do perfectly. And if you read the first book in that series, you'll see that there's a lot of flaws in that book, but I'm not going to change that book. And one of the reasons why I'm not going to change it, because it tells a story beyond the story. And that story is my where I was at that point for writing, and it conveys a lot of ideas that were going on in my mind. And I think that's happening for every writer. I think that every writer is wrestling with things, and that's why, even if you don't agree with a book, if it's written in earnest, or if it's written in a way that is actually trying to convey the experience of the writer, it's actually a good book. So that's the plan for that. A very long series. It might extend beyond 10 books. Like I said, it's similar to Wheel of Time, which is a very long series as well. The epilogue in that first book is the very end of the series, just to let everybody know. I think the epilogue is set in 1992. The series starts in 1976, bicentennial of the United States. The epilogue of that first book is 1992, I believe. Therefore, it's the end of the entire series. So the entire series extends, what is that, 16 years? Is that 16 years? I think that's 16 years if I'm doing the math correctly. But everything ties together, and I do have a plan for that entire series and the direction it's going. I know what it's going to happen. I know what's happening at the very end of the last book, actually. And I don't believe it's going to change, but there could be things that change it. So that's just one project that I'm working on, and I expect to get that project done in about, from here on out, I think maybe 15 years from this point, and that project will be finished. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe it'll be like a decade if things work out differently. But as I'm writing right now, I think it's going to be 15-ish, maybe a little bit more. I seem to write faster each time I write a book. The second thing I'm working on is the serialized novel One Last Toast for Ebenezer Fleet. And I don't know how long this is going to be, but this is the plan with this book. And I have one more thing about the In Memoriam series, or the ninth hour after this. This is the plan with this book. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the entire serialization process. And then I'm going to take everything I've written, and then I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to make it as tight of a story as I can. It might be turned into multiple books. However many books I need to make it a good story, I'm going to make it that. And it's going to change, right? I wanted to do a serialized novel because it's stretching myself. It's trying to do something different that most people don't do, right? Some people do serialized novels, but trying to come up with stories week to week. And I do have a plan for that as well and where it's going, but I don't do tons of planning. I just do planning from chapter to chapter. Doing that is stretching you, and you're trying to maintain all this information in your mind at once. And that's why I'm doing that. And what's going to happen is that serialized novel is going to stay as the raw serialized novel in chapter format on my website. It's going to be in the raw serialized novel in the audio that I put up on the podcast, its own feed. It's going to stay in that form as well, but besides that, I'm going to be taking it, I'm going to be editing it, and I'm going to be making it a finished product because I really don't consider it one at this point. And in the future, I don't know if this is going to end up happening, but after I finish that and I get to the point where I edit it and I fix it to where I want it to be, it's going to be different than the original. I'm probably going to have the original and the edited published together, but it's going to be very explicit that it's two different things. If I can swing it, I might actually have them in the same exact binding, so you can read the original and read the edited one together, and you can see how it's changed. I like that idea. But after that's all finished, I do plan, and plans can change, but my plan right now is that I'm going to always have something that is coming out in serialized format. It's not this finished product, but it is something that's coming out that people can see, and they can say, oh, I really like this, and then they can also see how it's going to end or what it is after it's been completed. Okay, going back to In Memoriam, because I forgot this. Going back to In Memoriam, I plan on, or I'm possibly going to do a more professional recording of this. That is, I don't know if I'm going to be speaking. I don't really like reading my own stuff out loud because I don't think I have that great of a voice, but that's neither here nor there. I might get somebody else to read it. I might do it myself. I don't know yet, but there might be a more professional audiobook of In Memoriam of the ninth hour that comes out. Okay, I forgot about that. All right, besides that, I've got a book in the works that I'm planning on traditionally publishing, and every book I plan on traditionally publishing is going to be a standalone book. I don't think I'm ever going to have. Oh, there's a. I should add that as well. So I have a standalone book that I'm publishing. I think it would be classified under the thriller genre. I'm not publishing it. I'm not. I haven't even started technically writing the first draft yet, but I am working on it. And I'm going through that process because I think it's good to have I think it's good to have multiple lines out. You know, you're trying to catch something and you're in a lot of different areas. And this is how I'm in that traditionally published area. So I'm trying to make a book that will be extremely marketable. It's not going to be the same exact thing as the other things I'm doing, but it's me, I'm writing it, so it's going to come across as if I'm writing it. And my goal with this is really to write as polished as physically possible. And I guess with In Memoriam, those books, I'm trying to write as polished as physically possible as well. But I'm really trying to write really clean. So I'm trying to do something that publishers are really going to like. But at the same time, I don't want to just be boring either. So there's some people, and I've ragged on them in the past, who write one book and they get really famous and they write that same book 7 more times, 20 more times. So they write the same book, they follow that format, they keep on doing the same thing. They never go outside their genre. They're never writing anything except this same adventure story, and I don't want to do that. But with this traditional published book, I do want it to be something that when a publisher looks at it or an agent, they're like, wow, this is really good. We really think this can go places. And that's my goal there. With anything that gets traditionally published for me, I'm going to always plan on it being like a book that stands alone. Okay. So that's something else that's coming out. So the Fleet chapters, I don't know. I think that in about 1 or 2 years, I'll have that, finished product done. That book you can actually hold and feel and read, the paper version. With a traditionally published book, it could be about 3 years before that gets published and out on the market, but I'll definitely update everybody when it does, because why wouldn't I? The only other traditionally published thing that I'm going to do besides standalone books, the series that I want to do is a fantasy series in the future. And the fantasy series that I want to do in the future is I want it to read like folklore or a fairy tale. Maybe not so much a fairy tale, but more folklore. And what I mean by that is folklore is this idea, or when you read folklore or when you look into folklore, there's this idea that there's these mystical, sometimes magical things that happen in the world, right? So there's certain spirits, or if you look back to mythology, we can call it mythology as well. If you look back to mythology, there's dryads, and there's water spirits and different things like that. But my sense when I read folklore is that these things are mysterious, right? You say, oh, there's this spirit that lives in the woods, but nobody's actually seen the spirit. Nobody's actually encountered the spirit, or people have encountered the spirit in some sense, but they haven't seen it clearly, right? They saw a shadow moving through the woods. They're like, yeah, that was the spirit. Or they felt a feeling as they went through the woods, or there was a noise that they couldn't account for. And people made up stories, or they used old stories to explain things that were going on. And there was this understanding that these old stories were true, but but it was more of this mystical thing that it was hard to get in touch with it, right? This is the idea. I think there's actually still places in the world, in Europe, where they believe that there are still there's fairies. And I might be completely wrong about that, but it's the idea of fairies, like in the 1920s or the late 1800s, that, oh, fairies exist, and there was actually a host. There was actually a hoax, not a host. There was actually a hoax. I can't say that. That people took pictures of these paper fairies and were like, oh, we found these fairies. And people thought, oh, fairies, like maybe fairies do exist. Maybe they don't. There's also this, in relation to this children's book, when people started to traverse the globe, or when you had people who were sailing more and it wasn't as scientific, people would see certain things, right? People would see certain things in the water, and they couldn't see it perfectly, but they interpreted those things they saw in a way that wasn't correct. So there's the idea of mermaids. Mermaids would fit into folklore, fairy tales, or mythology, right? Mermaids are what people think is that sailors saw manatees and they had a specific shape, and they thought they were women with fish's tails. Or fish tails, I guess. And they reported this to people. So folklore, what I think of it is like you're experiencing reality, and you think there is something that is mystical or magical about that reality, but you're just on there's just a film between you and that thing. And that's how I want to write that children's series. And that's something that I think within the next 5 years, I want to at least have at least the first book completed within the next 5 years. So that's one of the things I'm doing. The final thing, if you're still listening, the final thing that I plan on doing in the future, or I'm considering, is exploring storytelling in different ways. Okay. Some ways that I've thought about is, well, there's always video games, right? I think it'd be cool to explore that area, see what's possible, because that type of storytelling is certainly different than just telling a story via a book or a serialized novel or even a series of books. It's very much you experience it because you're going through it in a specific way. And one of the reasons why I'm considering doing that is because you can have multiple different branching storylines. You can have people make choices, and it changes what the story is. And if you do it in the correct way, it can really be an impactful story, and you can have a different story each time. So that's one area that I've considered. I think that at some point in the future, I don't know how long in the future, I'll plan on doing that. And another aspect that I've considered, and I don't know if it's a good venue for storytelling, is board games. I'm not sure if you can actually tell a story for this. I really have to dig into that. So yeah, that's what I'm planning in the future, though. That's the reason why I'm done with this as of now, right? I've got other stuff going on. I'm not doing this full time, but there's so many projects that I want to actually do that I actually have to I have to make time to do it. And right now the podcast it doesn't allow me to do that. Okay. And if you want to follow my stuff, again, follow me on one of my social medias, because that's the best way to do it. You can also check me out on my website. There's always going to be stuff coming out on there. But if you want to continue to support me, just grab what I write, spread it around, right? Share stuff. That's the best way to do it, because word of mouth it's really the best way to get something, right? If you like a book, or if you like a story, if you like anything, and you tell somebody else, or you're like, man, this is really good, that person's going to look at that thing different. They're going to give that thing a chance. And I'm not saying that, not everybody likes everything, and I understand that, but if you do like it, share it, because it's something you can do to support me. And if you want to see me write more, if you want to see more stuff coming out from me, and if you like this podcast and you're like, hey, we really want this to happen again, the more time I have, the better I'm able to do that. So that's what I've got. And I hope that I'm looking forward to all of this stuff, and I hope that other people are too. And I hope to get it out as quickly as possible, because I really try to push myself to get it done as fast as possible, but more importantly as well as possible, because I'd rather write a really good book that takes 10 years. I'd rather write something that really conveys something real that takes 10 years than write something that is pulpy and pointless that takes 3 months. All right, that's all I've got. My name is Daniel Poppy, and this is How to Write Good.